And just so I know, you're an entrepreneur because I never asked you professionally what you did. I always thought you were the James Bond type because anytime I've seen you rarely socially, I mean, just a few
Yeah.
times, we've never talked about like work. I think I may have
Yeah.
mentioned a little bit about what I was doing,
Yeah.
but you seemed always so mysterious. So I'm like,
Really?
maybe he's a spy. Maybe he's
Then
CIA.
I need to start
Ooh.
telling people I work for the government.
That's right. And then just leave it at that.
Right.
Just drop that.
There's
That's
so many people do that in DC, right? They're like, oh, I work for the government. I was like, bullshit, you're an accountant.
well, but it I think this banter is applicable for the podcast, honestly, because
Sure, yeah.
we live in an environment, or I guess a city not too different than other East Coast cities,
Right.
where so everyone leads by what they do,
Mm.
right? Like it's like their identity. And so when someone like you doesn't talk about what he does, someone like me is like, oh, he's got to be a spy. Because if he wasn't a spy, he would tell me what he's doing.
The reason being, and I actually like this group of friends that your group, like Lakshmi and
That's
Sanjeev,
your group too, yeah.
I guess, yeah, that's becoming my group as well. I like this group because they rarely ever talk about work. Because
Mm.
living in this area, DC metro area, everybody wants to talk about their title,
Yeah.
right? They will always ask, what do you do? Because they want to say I'm a director of
Really?
something and this and that,
Yeah.
right? I think getting to this age, it doesn't matter much to me whether somebody works for PwC or Deloitte or, Department of Education. To me, it doesn't really matter if I connect with somebody. Doesn't matter what you do, doesn't matter how old you are. I want to talk to the person. If I can, so I try not to bring up about my work unless somebody asks. That's one reason. Second is, so I started working as a consultant. I've done consulting for many years, and then I started my business. So I also don't want to be like, oh, I own a business. Right? So I kind of shy away from, unless somebody asks. Even now, I think I just say I'm a consultant.
Yeah.
Then if somebody gets into, then I may start to talk about it. So I kind of, that side of it, work wise, I don't bring up unless somebody really kind of ask me that. That's probably why it never came up.
Yeah, but let's talk about that for a second.
Sure.
Like, why not say that you're a business person? I think it's something to be very proud of.
It is, but I think because my experience in the DCA has been, when people are saying it, they're really trying to show off.
Oh.
Do you know what I'm saying? Because they're talking about work or profession because they're trying to sell in an environment in a one way or another. They're trying to either sell themselves, saying, look how cool I am. So I
Mhm.
kind of like, if somebody asks, I'll talk about it. Obviously, I can talk about my business all day long, but, but that's really why. So I really started with doing IT consulting, and then started my practice. Initially, it was mainly just me working as an independent consultant for many years, and then I got to a point I was like, you know what, I let me see if I can grow this out.
Mm.
I mean, there's a lot of stories in between, personal stories, but it's really just kind of got to a point I was like, let me see if I can grow this out. So it took years, lots of ups and downs.
Oh yeah.
And that's why I wanted to talk to you about, because when you talked about business and moving away. So let's start this. Let's start with your
Yeah.
introduction, and then we're going to get into, because I
Let's
was very key. We never really talked about the detail of it, right? I kind of got a sense of it. I got a sense of you as a person. So I was very interested in having this conversation. So let's get an introduction of who you are, what's your background, and then we'll start chatting.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. So, okay, well, here we go. I was like waiting for like some music or some effects.
No, it's just gonna be you and I just having a conversation. That's it.
Okay, all right, all right. Well, I want to say hello to your viewers, your listeners. I'm super excited that you've given me this opportunity. So my name is Kruti Kapadia, and I am originally from India, and my parents came here in the 70s. I was born in India, and I came here. They brought my brother and I over when we were 5 years old. And I grew up in New York City, go New York, love New York City. And then we made the inevitable move to New Jersey. That's where I had,
So
it's like a rite of passage, like if you're Indian, you go to New York and then
all the brown people end up going to Jersey.
Absolutely. And we were definitely one of them, mass, migration. And so I spent my junior high school and high school in New Jersey, and it's been a very that's my home. New Jersey is my home, and all of my family's in Jersey. I'm pretty much the only one who left, and I love going back home whenever I can, but I love also coming back here. So it's really wonderful. And I actually started my career in international development. I worked for the World Bank for a really long time, and I was doing strategic communications for the World Bank.
Oh, wow.
I supported the Asia region, and so I would travel to Asia quite a bit. So I can say on my resume that as a single person, I have hit pretty much every single honeymoon spot in Asia by myself. I mean, how many people can say that?
That must be exciting.
It's so exciting.
You see couples walking by. I was like,
I mean, I have worked in Bali by myself.
You worked at Bali?
Bali, yes. There was little old me with my laptop, honeymooners left and right. I've worked in Maldives by myself, honeymooners left and right.
Interesting.
And probably countless other places, even in Malaysia, I've been to a number of spots there. But yes, I have that on my resume.
That's awesome, though. No, it's great, though,
Great, yeah.
Yeah, the fact that you got to travel all these places.
Absolutely, yeah, and do really good work. The work that I was doing at the World Bank was really, a lot of it was stakeholder engagement, just getting out there, talking to people, getting a sense of where their pain points are, what their needs were, and then I would take that data, and then we'd create communications programs, based on what the pain points were. And so after the World Bank, I worked for a couple of other international nonprofits, so supporting Africa. So I've done a decent bit of East Africa. And it got to a point where I was just there's something missing. There's something just not connecting for me in this business anymore. And I went to see a career counselor, and we did a host of tests, lots of tests. And she's like, you should either be a chef or in the private sector. And I was like, oh, okay.
Very close choices.
Very close choices.
Easy pick.
So I was like, you know what? I do love to cook, but I'm not very good at it, and I don't have that kind of patience. So let me go to the private sector. It might be an easier transition. So I ended up working for a large consulting firm that supports the federal government, and it's actually a wonderful blend of my background. The government is conscious of taxpayers. They're conscious of social reform most of the time. So I'm bringing that interest, that energy. And then I'm also very private sector oriented because I'm very process oriented. I love strategies. I love methodologies. And so I'm bringing that together. So I've been with this company now for 14 years, and it's been a great ride. I've learned a lot about myself, and now on to the third iteration of my professional life, which is coaching. So yeah, I find myself now just starting my very first side hustle, Kapadia coaching, and my passion is really helping corporate professionals like myself start their own coaching business. Because I think,
Interesting.
yeah, so that's sort of the niche. I work with other coaches who want to launch their business, but they're coming from a corporate background.
So your business, your coaching business is to help others start their business or start their coaching business?
Start their coaching business.
Is there a specific area that you focus on? Do they have to be in a specific type of business or
Yeah, so they're generally, my clients are coming from a corporate background,
Sure.
and it could be, from they tend to be mid to senior level executives,
Okay.
who are interested in moving their careers in a more purposeful direction, and it's through coaching.
Sure.
It could be life coaching, it could be career coaching, it could be a host of health coaching. But the idea is to help provide them a structure to make that transition, or to get the business going, to launch their business. And then if they choose, to stay with them as they come up with a transition to leave their corporate job.
I want to come back to this. Obviously, I want to talk more about your coaching, but going back to your initial days when you're working for World Bank, obviously, you got a background in communication that I'm guessing that tremendously helping you now, having that sort of background. And then when you're working in different countries, were you going in and starting different? I had a friend of mine who was working with World Bank the similar way. She used to go to different countries when, let's say, new economic development is going on. World Bank is funding a new project or program, and she was part of the team. Was that sort of the initiative, or were you going in and sort of optimizing what's already there? Because you mentioned about kind of finding the pain points.
Yeah, it was more optimizing what was going on there. The bank as it's structured, I was in headquarters here in DC, but it's decentralized. So they have country offices that are in charge of actually doing the grassroots type work. I was there supporting the country offices in the work that they were doing. And so my lens would be really thinking about how to promote the programs that we're doing in these countries to a Western audience.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so the interviews that I would be doing, it would be sometimes when they spoke English, it would be in English. Sometimes I had translators. It was really to extract sort of the on the ground stories of what their day-to-day experiences were, and then use those stories to create communications for Western audiences.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That must have been a humbling experience too, because you're going into, obviously World Bank is not funding countries that are doing really well. Most of the time, a lot of their programs are focused on helping developing countries, right? So you are kind of seeing your work kind of shaping countries' future, right? Do you see it that way, or were you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I definitely see it that way. But for me, it's an exercise in equality. You are just there bringing a certain skill set and partnering with the skill set that already exists in the countries, and you're working together with them, which to me is global partnership in its truest form. And I think that one of the trigger points that I have that I probably need to work through is the Western view of developing economies. There is so much richness in these countries, and depending on what criteria you're using, they may be way ahead of us. And I've been to Bhutan, and Bhutan, for example, is considered a developing economy. But if you're there, people are very spiritual and very happy. the simplicity that they have around them,
Mhm.
the natural beauty as a
Mhm.
sustenance for that happiness and that
Mhm.
spirituality.
Mhm.
I don't think I've ever seen anything like that in my life,
Wow.
and I think that those are the stories that you don't hear about per se.
Mhm.
But these countries are very, very rich in so many ways.
And I think that's one of the I won't say drawback, but I think it's a sort of a lessons learned for Western countries. I think I don't know how much they really focus on that. A lot of times I feel that when we go to a country, we sort of take the approach of you learn it my way,
Yeah.
right? We are this and this, and we're doing really well. So you should be doing exactly what we're doing, our way of life or our way of doing things. But I think a lot of times we forget that, like you mentioned, that their point of view or how they view life may be very different than how we see it. So our methodology, our process may not truly work for them if we
No,
want them to just copy it, right?
absolutely. And it's very similar to uh, a large company selling their software
Sure.
to a client. It's going to need to be customized to fit the nuances of that company.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, you're selling something in one form,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not going to be applicable to 50 different clients. It's going to need to have some agility, some flexibility, some mechanism to change. And it's sort of the same thing. You're bringing solutions to developing economies with the mindset that there are going to be parts of it that will need to be tweaked
Absolutely.
to fit, and that's where I think that partnership is. It's because the stakeholders that you are working with on the ground in these countries, nobody knows the environment better than they do.
Mm-hmm.
So you're coming in with the solution and they're helping you craft the solution in a way that makes sense for them. And
Do
that
you
is the partnership.
do you think you having Asian background helped with that process? The fact that you sort of understand the culture, it's not the same, but there is similarities. Whether you go to Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Nepal, there are some similar mindset, right? The family background, the upbringing that you have, right? Do you think that background sort of helped you be successful in that part of the career?
Absolutely. It did, definitely. But I can say, in all fairness, that my colleagues who do not have my background, who may have been British, who may have been pure American, they did equally as well.
Mm.
I think that being a woman of color,
Mm.
I'm going to be honest. I mean, it
Sure.
doesn't really matter where you go. It can be a hindrance,
Mm.
And there are times where you're a woman of color in a meeting in some of these countries, and they will ask the British person,
Sure. I can see
what they
that.
think, like,
Yeah. Like,
and
what do
so
you know?
what do you know? What do you know? You look like my daughter. You remind me of so and so.
Sure, sure, sure.
So yeah,
Yeah,
it can it
yeah.
has
Pros and cons.
pros and cons. Yeah,
Pros and cons.
pros and cons.
And then your next career was about strategy work,
Yeah.
right?
So I work again in communications. I mean, I'm like a I think I'm a lifelong communicator.
That's
So
amazing.
I do strategic communications and change management work
Mhm.
for different federal clients. And that involves external communications, helping clients with external communications. But more recently, I've been doing a lot of internal communications to engage employees,
Mm.
get their buy-in
Mm.
on new initiatives,
Mm.
that sort of thing.
That's very different, right? Because internal external communication can be very different,
Very
right?
different.
Yeah. Then, so obviously, you've had a very stable career path,
Mm-hmm.
right? Everywhere you've been there for a while. You've been successful, and then now you're transitioning into your own business.
Yeah.
Right. So my question is, number one, why? I mean, I understand that there might be a natural want, right? If you eternally is a risk taker, are you a risk taker? Is that why? Like, tell me, like, exactly what's the reason you are starting? What are the reason?
It's a great question. It really is. I'm not a risk taker. I'm not. I want to be. I definitely want to be. But I'm here to kind of tell your audience that you don't need to be a risk taker in order to be an entrepreneur, that you can do it your own way. And so for me, my passion from a very young age has been personal development. I started off by reading books on the law of attraction and visualization and meditation. I started, I think, reading these books at the age of 13, 12
No
or 13.
way.
Yeah. And I started implementing what I was learning. And I was noticing the power that
in your teenage.
In my teenage years, yeah.
Do you know when I started to read those books? In my 40s.
That's okay. It's all good.
I'm just 20 some years behind.
That's totally fine. Oh, that's great.
That's amazing. Okay. So and then
No, and I struggled growing up. I struggled a lot with self-esteem. I struggled with my parents were absolutely wonderful providers, but I had a pesky brother who seemed to do everything right.
Oh no.
One of those.
Oh, no.
One of those. And we're so close in age. He's only 11 months apart. And we were in the same class. We were in the same school.
So constantly look at your brother.
Exactly. I mean, and not only from my parents, but from teachers, and it was hard. It was hard for me because I think I was a good student, but it didn't come to me easily like it did, for my brother.
Sure.
And so I would compare myself to him all the time. But in any case, I just found myself like wanting some empowerment, like something for myself, something to make me feel better. And I used to go to Barnes and Nobles a lot back when there were Barnes and Nobles, like actually brick and mortar bookstores. I'm dating myself. But I used to go and with my dad, and I would find these books and I just tuck myself away in the New Age section, like voraciously reading this stuff. And it started working. I would do visualizations or I would start with affirmations. And I really, at a young age, discovered the power that your mind has and the beliefs that you carry, and how they manifest negatively or positively. And so after that, it just sort of stayed with me. I would then, once I got into the professional world, I'd read books on relationships. I'd read books on getting promoted or having more presence in the workplace, that kind of thing. And so being in my consulting company for 14 years, again, I started feeling like that restlessness that okay, I cannot be doing this for the rest of my life. I'm in my late 40s now and I got to figure something out. I got to think what's the next chapter of my professional life, the next and probably final chapter. I don't want to be doing this. And so I just really did a lot of introspection and I was talking with someone and they were like, if you didn't have to worry about money, what is it that you would do? And I would be like, I would leverage everything I've learned in personal development and help others and make money off of it is the reality. And so, I explored coaching. I talked to a bunch of coaches. I do a lot of management as it is in my company, a lot of it. I've been doing it for years. And so I knew that I kind of enjoyed that bit. And so, I signed on with a coaching program and voila.
So it's really natural progression. It's like, you already had that calling.
Yeah.
You've been sort of, you've been practicing all of this. A lot of times people just talk about it. You, on the other hand, have been really implementing this manifestation and visualization, all of this. You're kind of sort of learning and implementing it in your life.
Yeah.
And now you feel that you have been fairly successful. So why not go out of my way and try to help others?
Absolutely.
And I think you're doing it in a very nicely fashion, because a lot of times people get too excited and they drop a stable career, a stable something, and start something new. And that's why you were saying that you don't really have to be a huge risk taker. You can start slowly, right? So you have your career, but you are slowly building it up on the side. And then once you get to a point where this is making way more than what you're doing, you could be doing this full time, right? So you don't really have to drop and jump into something new.
Yeah. And that is why I'm a huge proponent of signing up with a coach. Once you have decided, yes, I have been in corporate for a while, I want to now transition into coaching and using the skills that I have developed to help to coach people in whatever area that you choose to. Sign up to work with the coach almost right away, because that I didn't do that. And I was spinning my wheels for a really long time. I was trying to go through my studies, but then figure out, with the X number of hours that I have, where do I spend it in terms of business building? Like, do I spend it on my website? Right. Am I building content? Am I doing market surveys? Like where should my time go? Sure. And what happens is you do a little bit of this, you do a little bit of that, only to find out several months later, you haven't really made progress in any one thing. And so having worked, finally signed up with a coach who's pretty outstanding, I am moving so much faster than I have been before. And I'm moving in a way that is sequential, methodical, and one layer of action is building on another layer of action. And I have got the richness of her experience to lean on.
Right.
And we coaches believe that the wisdom lies in our clients. Sure. We're only here to sort of be a mirror and to ask the right questions.
Sure, you're kind of guiding them. It's like having a mentor, right?
That's right. Yeah.
If you get stuck, you can ask them for guidance, but at the same time, it's really you who is doing the work.
It's really the client, and the client has the wisdom.
Sure.
And so our job really is to be there front row and center and talk 2-3 things with them. It's very important to you do the work, but then you need a sounding board. How does this sound? How does that sound? And you need someone to ask you the right questions and to help you sort of pull your genius out.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think I would say it's really, really important to sign up almost right away once you've made that commitment to transition into having your own business. And I don't think that there's any one right way to sort of launch your business. I have colleagues who were in corporate who decided to go into coaching, and they pretty much left their job right away. And they may have had a different definition of security. Sure. They may have a larger pool of money, available to them. And they're equally as successful. And so I don't think that there's any right way to do it, but I think the right way to do it is to do it in a way that works with your own energy.
Sure.
And I tend to be risk averse. And so for me, it made more sense to kind of do this way. And I tend to, my clients are sort of the same way. You attract who you are. And so my clients are kind of in the same boat as I am. They're less reluctant to kind of jump into the deep end, which is great, and I think but having somebody to guide you, having some structure to follow is going to make your progress a lot faster.
First of all, how do someone reach out to you? Second, once somebody does, what's the process? Like, what process do you kind of take them through? Is there a step, guys? If I were to start a coaching practice with you, where would I start?
Well, yeah, we'd really start with just a conversation. First of all, my website right now is under development,
Sure.
and so it should be launched pretty quickly. But for now, everyone's getting in touch with me just through my email,
Okay.
kkapadia@kapadiacoaching.com, and I'll make sure you have it for your notes.
Sure.
But I start with a conversation. Where are you right now? Where is it that you want to go? What are your pain points? Based on your pain points, here's how we can work together. And it's a really kind of direct conversation, because
Sure.
in the end, it's really about the chemistry. We're going to work well together.
Right.
And I am someone who is definitely very compassionate, very in my feminine, but I'm also have a very strong business acumen. I'm very also direct and can tell you right away whether I can support you or not.
Okay.
And
That's
so
great.
it's really just a very no nonsense conversation. Is this something that we can, is this a goal that I can support you on?
I get the sense that you are very spiritual.
Yeah, I am extremely.
And I think you were mentioning something about energy in corporate world.
Yeah.
Right. I want to hear more about it.
Yeah. Energy, I define energy as the culmination of your thoughts and feelings. It sort of radiates your presence. And it's quantum physics. You attract who you are. It's one of these things where if a woman firmly believes that men do not pay on dates, guess what she's going to attract? Men who don't pay. And our thoughts create our reality. And so equally in the corporate space, your thoughts about your colleagues, your thoughts about the corporation, your thoughts about your management, they all come together to create your energy in the workplace. And so the problems, the accomplishments can all be tied back to what it is that you're thinking and feeling.
That's what you end up manifesting, basically.
That's what you end up manifesting. And so it's no different than any other area of your life. But it's also incredibly empowering, because if we know that our thoughts create our reality, and if we can get to a point where we are 100% accountable and own everything that we've created in our life, you have the power to change it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is there a specific practice you follow? Like, let's say there are different people a different way, right? Based on your upbringing, based on your life experience, your thought process may have shifted, right? You may be one of those who wake up really happy. You may be one of those you wake up like, oh, come on. Right? So depending on what's going on, but generally speaking, there are some people who are positive, there are some people who are negative. Like the energy is just that way. For you going through life, right? We're both in our 40s. Obviously, we have seen and experienced things. For you to stay positive, is there sort of ritual or practice you have? Do you have a morning routine, or how do you start your day?
I'm a morning person. My energy is heightened in the morning, and I'm pretty much useless after 2 p.m. So I save all my
I love how calmly you say that.
Yes, pretty much useless. I can tell you that.
Don't talk to me after 2 o'clock.
No. But I'm very fresh but I do not wake up all bubbly and happy. I tend to wake up sometimes stressed. It's interesting because you're sleeping and finally your mind awakens and all of that buried stuff like comes popping up. I got to do this, I got to do that. And so I do have a morning practice to help me kind of tame that a little bit. I wake up in the morning and I coffee is essential. It's an essential thing in my life. And I journal. I journal for a bit, and then I create a gratitude list.
Wow.
I've been doing this now every day for 2 years, and it has had profound impact on the way that I position myself for the day, mentally position myself. And so I write a gratitude list, and I also record, maybe a couple of things that I felt were magical from the day before. What was like actually really inspiring and what was magical. And all you're really doing with these practices is training your mind to focus on what is working.
You're reprogramming your mind.
Reprogramming your mind to think about what is working. Because again, law of attraction, when you think about things that aren't working, you're going to attract things that don't work. When you think about things that are working, you will attract the things that work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so I do that every morning, and then I will go to the gym. That helps me quite a bit as well. Gets me out of my headspace and into my body. And then I kind of, start the day. I start the day. But the one thing that I will say is that I've gotten very, very good at over the years is feeling my feelings. We're all like human, and no one's ever going to be happy all the time. You're not meant to be happy all the time. But the art of being able to feel whatever it is that you need to feel can be frightening for a lot of people, but it's important that we do that in order to get it out of our system.
So it's basically you sort of accepting what is going on.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily reacting to it,
right,
but you are sort of accepting the fact that, okay, I'm in pain.
I'm in pain, and I'm feeling angry, or I'm feeling really, really hurt right now. And okay, it's not appropriate right now to tell the other person who's triggered me. May not make sense. But what is my outlet to kind of connect with that emotion and just get it out of my system? Sometimes it's crying. Sometimes it's beating a pillow.
Sure.
It's whatever you need to do to really honor the part of you that is experiencing those emotions and finding a way to release them. Because the sabotage starts happening when you don't resist, or I'm sorry, when you
resist, right?
When you resist,
right? When you are not, it's hard, right? I think the process is hard. Transition is hard, because it's easy for anyone to sort of ignore feelings. Yeah. Oh, easy to say nothing happened, or I'm tough, forget it, and then go get a drink. Then actually sitting down and say, okay, my heart is broken. What am I going to do about this now? Yeah. Just accepting and realizing, and then start to work. I think it's hard transition, hard to accept it, and even harder to start to recognize, kind of like seeing your feeling. Yeah. Right. You sort of watch yourself going through the process and not react to the world, and then start to program yourself saying, okay, in this situation, what are the things I can do? Like your journaling, everyday journaling. I actually forgot about journaling. Thank you, because I'm going to start. Oh, good. I used to do that quite a bit. And then I do positive affirmation, usually every night. Yeah. Before I go to sleep, either I'll think about it, I'll listen to a tape, or when I wake up in the morning, because it sort of switches your thought process. It does. Right. Because otherwise things happen, somebody calls, something's going on. Like right now in my family, 2 of my nephews are going through stuff, and they're constantly calling because I'm close to them. Right. And then as you hear what's going on, you sort of start feeling like you're going through it. You absorb it. Yeah. Right. You absorb the energy. I think once you start to recognize energy, you start to feel the energy, and you easily can feel yourself heavy. Oh, yeah. And if you don't sort of shake it off, or if you don't have those methods or tools of shaking it off, you start thinking negative things, even though your life may be wonderful, right? Absolutely. Absolutely. And to build on that, once you start thinking the negative things, they then become the lens in which you see things, right? And that's projection. That's when you start projecting, and they're
then that sabotage just starts happening over and over. And so, yeah, for me, and this is something that, when you're making a really big transition, like starting your own business, working for someone else and going on your own. And again, I'm also working with an age group that's between like 45 and 55. And by then, you're rooted in your career, you're rooted in your sense of authority in your profession, and to shake all of that up again, it's scary. I mean, it's definitely rattles you, but that rattling is really important to acknowledge and not just stuff, because if you stuff it and take action, guess what? It's going to come back up again.
I think that's a really good point, because when we started the conversation about how come I never mentioned before that I own a business, right? And we're talking about how I try to avoid using titles.
Yeah.
So if you have worked as a, let's say, director or vice president of something, where at work everyone, because of your title, you are getting a certain amount of respect, or you have certain amount of authority. You coming out of that and starting your own practice, when you are the proposal writer, you are the marketing expert, you are the CEO, right?
Yeah.
So when you are presenting yourself to a client, if you go to a client because you are a vice president of PwC, they may respect you in a way, versus you going in, starting your own company and reaching the same client. You may not get the same sort of respect and same sort of attention.
Yeah.
That shift has to be tough, right, for people?
Absolutely. It's definitely tough, but the beauty of that, again, is if you, and I'm not trying to make a sales plug here, but I say this very genuinely. The beauty of having a coach by your side as you're going through this is the constant reframing. Somebody who's listening to your dialogue, and helping you to see things differently. There's a reason why you've been in corporate for so long and now you want to be a coach. It's because you have a God-given talent for it, and you've recognized that within yourself. And it's likely that you have been demonstrating that all along, and now you're just taking it to a professional level. So let me, as a coach, remind you of that. Right. And let's look backwards and see where you've done these things really, really well. And how can you weave that into your conversations with potential clients? And for me, it was also important. It took a while, but I really needed to learn the art of looking backwards in my professional life and seeing what I can leverage and bring into the coaching experience. Because it felt in the beginning like it was like, whoa, I'm making like a transition from A to Z, but you're really not. If we look back, we've always been these intuitive beings, and we've chosen jobs that have built on top of each other.
Yeah, it really got you ready for this. Like,
really got you ready for it.
That's why I was actually trying to get more from each of your work experience, because kind of felt that initially you were in this communication field, and then learning strategy and methodology, and then communication again. So it's together. That's a really nice combination to be a coach. Because coach is all about structure, right?
Coaches are about structure. They're also about development, expansion,
right?
And that is connected to my love for personal development and all of the books and teachings and the classes that I've taken in that arena. And so, it's expansion. It's about compassion and empathy, the spirituality of it. It is about structure, and it's about strategy as well. There's a good bit of strategy, because when you're helping a coach step into their professional life, it's not just as a coach, but it's as a business person as well. And they have to wear those two hats, and they have to do it successfully until perhaps they've gotten to a point where they are successful enough to outsource certain things. But in the beginning, you have to do everything yourself.
You don't become Tony Robbins on day one, right?
No.
It takes a little,
it takes some never get there, but that's okay. But yeah, it takes a while. It definitely takes a while.
Yeah.
It's
actually, while you were talking, I was thinking about it. I have a set of friends who has started more sort of spiritual practice, spiritual coaching business.
Wow, wonderful.
So I actually want to connect them to you because you have a spiritual background. I can tell you have a ritual and practice that you do.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you have a solid business background, corporate environment. And from talking to them, I know that they sort of struggle in the business side of it. It's like the left brain people and right brain people, right? When you are an artist, when you are a lot of times a spiritual healer, you may not be may not always be as structured business-wise. You have a gift, you have a talent. A lot of times you sort of struggle building a business. I would think that someone like that, having you as a coach would be really helpful. And on the other side too, people who are very structured, doesn't know how to, and you were saying that, maybe you have thought about something for many years. Like back in your head, you're kind of like, this is not exactly what I want to do rest of my life. A lot of us think about it that way, right? A lot of people never end up actually making the switch.
That's right. Yeah.
And that, for you to take the leap of faith, having someone like you as a coach, as a guide, right, to sort of steer them in the right directions, absolutely, I think absolutely is necessary. That's why even if you're the best basketball player or soccer player, you end up working under a coach.
Yeah, you do.
Right? I mean, think about it, right? Yeah.
You do. And I think that is you phrased it excellently, and I would love to meet these friends. But I was going to say that Tony Robbins probably even has a coach. I mean,
I'm sure probably.
Makes sense. And it's the beauty of having that consistent partnership, that consistent mentoring. Because for me, I'm a very value-based person. And for me, expansion is one of my top values. And so I know that as I move forward in this life, I will always want to be growing and learning and sort of gently in my own way pushing the boundaries in life. And so I think so for me, always having a coach, always having somebody I trust who I see as maybe a few steps ahead of me in the direction I want to go in is going to be key. Because I'm also not a time waster. I don't do well in that space either. Like there are some people who are like, oh, I'll spend my time 4 hours and figure it out. That's just not me. I'd rather take the shortcut to my destination if I can.
Sure. If it's possible, if it's done the right way.
If it's there, why not?